Hey everyone, it's Wrestlemania season, and with us being on what's known as the road to Wrestlemania, towards the show that is entitled Wrestlemania, I only have one question for you.
I said, are you ready for the Survivor Series?
This week, I'm reviewing Wrestlemania the album, what I can only assume was the WWF's attempt to get into that lucrative Eurodance craze that was going on in the early 1990s. It sounds like I'm joking, but really, that's the best way to describe this album. Well, that and practically unlistenable. Just look at the men behind this thing. The album, which dropped in July of '93, was composed by Mike Stock and Pete Waterman, best known as two-thirds of Stock Aitken Waterman, one of the most prolific songwriting groups in UK history. They were a big deal in the music scene at the time, so the pedigree was certainly there. In their prime, their whole MO was Eurodance, high energy, drum machines, all that stuff. Musically, this album isn't that far off from some of the hits that were big on the charts at the time, so at least we had a rare moment in which the WWF was culturally with it. But like the genre itself, this album has not aged well. Most of the songs feature the same tired beat, and the lyrics are generally terrible. Well, actually, calling them lyrics is kind of misleading because that implies that the words the wrestlers are saying in this album were written in advance, but I'm skeptical of that.
When you get in the ring, I'll show you how to get beat up.
The Hitman, the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
We're coming after you, and you're gonna get nasty stuff right down your throat. This is the way it is, and I will be there with you when it happens.
Aside from some rare exceptions, all the dialogue in this album seems to be an assortment of off-the-cuff promos the composers chopped up and put in a Casio keyboard. You couldn't write stuff this generic if you tried, and Lord knows current programming has proven that they've tried. It's also worth pointing out the executive producer of this album was none other than Simon Cowell. Yep, Pop Idol, X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, schmillionaire Simon Cowell was the EP of Wrestlemania the album. I don't know about you, but I think that qualifies him as a future Hall of Famer. Let's begin. Our first track is Wrestlemania, the song that would become the theme for Manias 9 through 14. That they got 6 years of use out of this song is incredible, especially when you consider how poorly it fit the company's image by the end. The song would later go on to be used as the theme for bland, vanilla babyface Linda McMahon. Now, that was a perfect fit.
I said, are you ready for the Survivor Series?
What an odd way for the album to kick off, considering the album and the song are both called Wrestlemania. That familiar melody kicks in, and from there we get a lot of wrestlers shouting about nothing apropos to the song.
The way Tatanka sees it, to climb to the top in the World Wrestling Federation, Tatanka will be successful.
If that line sounds like it makes no sense, that's because it's not actually one fluid sentence. They took elements from multiple sound bites from a later track and hastily glued them together for that verse. Which begs the question, why would you do that?
Ever since I was a little bitty boy, I wanted to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to be a law enforcement officer. Treating other people like you'd want to be treated.
Yeah, like picking on somebody when their daddy dies, or killing a guy's dog and feeding it to him.
Because that's the only way you're going to survive in this life. Who will survive?
This is the Wrestlemania album! We also hear from Bret Hart, who instantly dates this album in one sentence.
Let me tell you something, boys. I am the World Wrestling Federation champion. The excellence of execution is on top.
Him saying that line at all is bad enough, but it's worse when you realize that by the time this album came out, he hadn't been champion in months and wouldn't be again until Mania 10. After a couple of, quote, verses, we finally get a rap interlude by someone, it's not important who. It's an inoffensive bridge that I guess is meant to help make the song sound like, you know, more of an actual song.
Here it comes, coming at ya. So pick it up, yo, you better catch ya. The bad boys are back on the block. 10 off the top, we won't be stopped. It swings, like the mighty Thor. You need to call it the Fantastic Four.
Ooh, a Marvel reference. Well, someone's getting a retroactive lawsuit from Disney. Up next is the second single on this album, SummerSlam Jam, or just Slam Jam for the UK version. I wish it was a song from the Space Jam soundtrack, but no such luck.
Slam Jam, thank you, ma'am. Macho, yeah. Hitman bends, but the Hitman does not break.
It's another 2 verses of promo snippets, another rap, and that's it. It's the exact same formula as the last song we just heard. It's almost the same beat. It's basically an alternate version of the Wrestlemania track. Oh, Wrestlemania, yeah, this is our lives. There's an extended version of this song at the end of the UK version of the album that just goes longer, is mixed ever so slightly different, and that's about it. Not even worth talking about here, to be honest. This song actually includes a line or two from the British Bulldog, which was interesting considering he was in WCW by the time this album got released. So, no one left on the roster to grab a new soundbite from, huh?
I'm the British Bulldog, and you're going down.
So that means Davey Boy's first tenure in WCW was marked by three things. He witnessed the birth of the Shockmaster, he saved Sting from a bomb that was planted on a boat by an evil one-eyed little person, and he was featured on a WWF album while under WCW contract. I don't know why he didn't call it a career then, he clearly peaked.
I got my 2x4. I got the American flag.
Speaking of guys who were either gone or on their way out by the time this album was released, here's USA, featuring Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who I think is being described here as... Okay, at least one of those words is patently false by 93, but sure, let's entertain that idea. In this song, Hacksaw spends the whole time waxing philosophical about pre-match jitters, but how Old Glory always gets him pumped up.
Then right before I go through the curtain, I got the American flag over my shoulder. The hair on the back of my neck stands straight up. The blood starts pumping through my heart. The air's in my lungs.
And that's about it. Of all the songs on this album, this one is the earworm for me. I don't know what it is about the chorus that kept it in permanent rotation in my brain for the last week. Is it the repetition, the melody, the dying cat in the background of Duggan yelling? This probably inspired the guys who did Vince McMahon's song on Aggression.
Before I catch you and make you pay.
Well, 3 tracks in and I already want to die. What's next? I know the Nasty Boys used to say in promos that Janet Jackson was singing about them in her song of the same name, but this is a little too on the nose for my tastes.
Nasty boys, I don't mean a thing.
Considering 93 was one of Janet's biggest years as a performer, maybe the producers were hoping to glom off of her success with such an obvious ripoff. Man, I was joking about that Disney lawsuit from before, but I think Janet's got a case here. The only thing going for this track is that it stands out in a major way from the previous 3 in terms of tone and tempo. It's a welcome change from what we've heard so far. I think it would have even been cool as a temporary entrance theme for the team. It's too bad they also got fired the year this album came out.
There's no way to make this easy. And I know we've been through some good and troubled times.
Up next is the landmark single from our, quote, WWF champion Bret Hart, Never Been a Right Time to Say Goodbye. While mostly everything else in this album is suspect, this track seems to be the only one where lyrics were actually written for the wrestler in question. Now, as we all know, Bret Hart is good at a lot of things. Wrestling, acting, granting wishes, but singing has never been his forte. So, why start now?
But if I stay, she'll only see right through me. And then that look of shame inside my eyes.
I thought Bret wearing a necktie over his gimmick was weird, but talking his way through a sad ballad tops that. If these lyrics were given to someone who actually had vocal talent, I could see it maybe working. But here it just comes off like a bad poetry reading.
But either way, she'll end up crying.
I don't know why that sounds so weird to me.
She'll end up crying.
Also, the music in the chorus is way too upbeat and punchy for this song. It's supposed to be a heartbreaking tale of leaving someone you love, and while putting a dark topic to an upbeat melody has been done well before, it does not work here.
Just for you.
Our next selection is called The Man in Black, but this is no Johnny Cash song you're listening to. It's the master of the Demon Dizzy himself, The Undertaker.
The most powerful entity in the World Wrestling Federation.
I know it has to be hard to compose a song about a guy whose gimmick is all about death and darkness, then put a beat to it, but there has to be a better outcome than something that sounds like an unused track from the graveyard stage of Michael Jackson's Moonwalker game. After a performance like that, he deserved to lose to Roman Reigns. Yes, feed me with your anger.
The tower of power, too sweet to be sour, funky like a monkey, ooh yeah.
In Speaking from the Heart, Randy Savage talks about... I have no idea.
Soaring with the eagles and slithering with the snakes, I've been everywhere in between. I am your friend. Macho Man talking to you right now. The moon, the stars, Venus, Pluto, Saturn, yeah. All gonna climb that mountain together and we are together forever.
Is he a wrestler, a motivational speaker, an astronomer, Jesus? This is all over the place, even for the Macho Man. Can't you just pull out the coffee creamer again or talk about crying towels? I'd rather listen to a 4-disc set of his rap music than hear this song ever again. The next track on this album is called Tatanka Native American. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Tatanka, Buffalo, Tatanka, Buffalo.
If you enjoyed that clip I just played, you won't after you hear it 300 more times in this song. Aside from having one of the funniest out-of-context sentence fragments in the whole album,
Tatanka, in the World Wrestling Federation. Tatanka, in the World Wrestling Federation.
at least the vibe of the song fits the character and the lyrics without becoming farcical like the Undertaker song. But my god, the repetition. This song is the worst in the album in terms of that. I would have been driven mad by it already, but, well, you know. You know, I did not expect Mr. Perfect's theme to work so well as a track for a Sonic game.
What you're looking at right here is Mr. Perfect. It doesn't get any better than this. Bottom line. Bottom line.
It's just another promo set to a beat. At this point, I really shouldn't be surprised since that's all this album's ever been up to this point, random ballad excluded. But why should Bret be the only one with an original track? I can't believe they didn't tap into Curt Hennig's natural rapping ability.
I'm Curt Hennig and Big Scott Hall. As tag team champs, we'll take on them all. So bring on the Long Riders, those dirtball dumbos. We'll smear those bushes, use the Wrestle Rock Rumble.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, there were two different versions of this album. There was one for the US release and a slightly different one for the United Kingdom. Well, here's the UK exclusive track, a song about, naturally, a wrestler from the islands, brah.
Aloha, everybody. The Crush coming out to thank each and every one of you for getting behind me the way you have.
In this song, Crush takes time to thank the fans for supporting him. Yeah, this is a message worth burning onto a CD for all time.
You know, I was just thinking, if I was back home in Hawaii, I'd probably be kicking back at the beach, surfing, diving, surfing, crushing open some coconuts.
There's really not much else to the song. Crush says mahalo a lot, talks about eating coconut on the islands, just the most boring thing on the album, and that's saying a lot. One notable thing about it is the tragic irony of him squeezing in an anti-drug message at the end, when Bryan Adams himself would pass away from an accidental overdose years later. Yeah, this whole song's pretty much a downer.
Stay away from drugs, okay? Life is hard enough. We need all the help we can get, brother. And drugs is a dead-end road.
I made a vow to protect and serve.
Our final track is Hard Times. Despite also being gone from the company by the time the album came out, Boss Man's definitely one of the stars of the whole thing. Not only is he all over the opening song, he gets his own track at the very end with all new dialogue. Bland, generic dialogue, but new nonetheless. The thing that makes this track okay is that it's basically a remix of his original theme. The chorus is just the lyrics to Hard Times with a new beat, but here it works.
If you ever take a trip down to Carroll County, Georgia, you better read the signs. Respect the law and order, you'll some hard time.
See, put a little Jimmy Hart influence in this album and watch things drastically improve. Whoa, hey, now let's take a step back. So that was Wrestlemania the album, the sounds of the new generation, an album completely devoid of Hulkamania. And this thing stinks. I'm not going to ignore the fact that this album charted in the UK. I won't omit the fact that Slam Jam somehow peaked at number 4 in the UK and went silver there. But this is just a poor excuse to make the WWF hip. The music doesn't enhance the promos, and the promos don't enhance the music. The album is incredibly dated from the get-go because half the people involved were gone from the company by the time it came out. Everything sounds the same. There's nothing unique about these songs like there was in the wrestling album. At least Aggression had a variety of tracks using a wide range of hip-hop artists with different styles of performing. Even WWE Original seems to have been made with more effort. If I had to pinpoint a reason that Simon Cowell seems so mean on American Idol, I would bet that being involved with this had something to do with it. But in the end, the big question is, can you dance to it? You sure as shit can.